It's time for the Brouhaha Sports Show. Brouhaha Sports with award-winning sports writer Dale McKee and co-host Marshall Wood. Talking sports with the legends of the game and famous sports personalities. Brouhaha! Now to Marshall and Dale with tonight's guest.
Good evening, everyone. Brouhaha time. Marshall Wood, Dale McKee, getting ready to break it down again. How's Dale doing today?
Man, I'm doing good, man. I've been hearing that national anthem over at that Olympics. I got excited, man. You know, them poor people in Canada, I like those old boys. They're like our first cousins, the way I look at it in this world structure. But, you know, they haven't had a very good last 4 months. First of all, they went to the 7th grade with the LA Dodgers in baseball and they lost. And that crushed them in November. And then this Olympic thing, the USA getting up on that podium.
Which podium?
In hockey.
Oh, yeah.
Twice. And getting that national anthem, United States.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the greatest song ever.
In the world.
I don't care what they
God
say.
God bless America.
Yeah,
I'm with you, buddy.
There's just two beautiful deals. It's that and Amazing Grace. I don't know what any other songs that there are. They need to play that at my funeral. Can you make sure that happens?
Well, I don't know. You probably. What if I die first?
Huh?
What if I'm gone?
Well, I'll play it there. just so I can hear it.
The Olympics, I tell you something. The story of the Olympics for me, apart from the hockey thing, was great. But I have been watching curling, and I mean, everybody I see a lot, not everybody, but it's amazing to me how often that comes up. And I'm saying, you're watching that too? Did you watch any of the curling, Dale?
Very little of it, very little.
Well, this is more for a refined athletic taste than what you bring to the table.
No. I just don't watch a lot of TV anymore, except certain shows.
You're a radio and a reading guy. You read a lot because you're a writer.
I like to read, yeah.
Do you?
Yeah. You know, reading, people don't understand it. It's like a vision. I remember when I was a small kid, but when I started getting interested in sports a lot, you know, back in the days, AM radio was big all over the country. You know, I could pick up, there was a radio station in Shreveport, Louisiana. I used to music and WLS, I think at WLS in Chicago. You know, you get all the hip songs.
KAAY, Little Rock, Arkansas. For the...
I mean, yeah. I mean, there was a lot. Well, for my sports, I listened to KMOX in St. Louis. Yeah. It was blaring. And I remember listening to the announcers announce a game, but St. Louis Cardinals when Stan Musial was playing. And I visualized Stan standing at bat with his stance, and the announcer would say, you know, he's going opposite field down the line, you know, it's up the wall, you know, and I'm just imagining all this. And I think reading does that for me too.
Yeah.
You know, I can imagine what the characters are saying.
Yeah.
And things like that. But now, if you want to know, I don't know what it is, but I think I have alcoholic readers in my house because my wife, she's like me. She said, "You've seen that movie 2 or 3 times on TV." I said, "Well, I like it." And she's reading a book. She'll read a book and then a year later read it again. Yeah. Just so she can kind of remember what was going on. Well, my grandchildren are just great readers. I mean, and they're reading like kind of like advanced books. Yeah. And I'm thinking, I couldn't read like that when I was a kid. Right. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I had other things, activities to do, but I mean, they just love to read. Yeah. You know? So we buy them books. You know.
That's nice. Reading, they say, is the window of the world.
Yeah, book clubs and things like that. So, yeah, it is. Anyway, how do we get on reading?
You'd have to ask yourself that question.
Yeah, okay. I guess I made a wrong turn.
No. Man, you can't go wrong with reading. Can't go wrong being right.
That's right. And it's your own interpretation of how you feel about it.
Have you got an interpretation about who our guest is going to be tonight?
Yeah, we got Dima Mixon. He's with Pine Belt Sports. They cover Petal, Hattiesburg, Oak Grove area. And he does a real good job down there with their little weekly newspaper down there. But he's an expert on USM sports, and we're going to talk a little bit about their basketball teams getting ready for the conference tournament here on March 3rd. And we're also going to talk to him about the Golden Eagles going out to Round Rock, Texas. And
it's a big deal.
beat Baylor and Oregon State, who was number 11 in the country at the time. But the Eagles have moved up from 20th to 12th in the polls yesterday.
Wow.
And Mississippi State's 4th, and Ole Miss is 25th now. And combined records of those 4 teams now are 22-1.
4 teams or 3?
3 teams.
Okay.
They're 22-1.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, of course. Now Delta State's having a great season too. They're like 9-2. But those 3, Mississippi is becoming a really a heaven for college baseball.
Good deal.
It really is.
The state of baseball.
State of baseball.
All right. That having been said, let's take a break to hear from one of our sponsors. We'll be back with tonight's guest right after this commercial break.
Phillips Building Supply in Laurel, your hometown building supply store since 1954. We are locally owned and pride ourselves on helping our customers find exactly what they need. From foundations to roofs to doors and windows, Phillips has it. For tools, hardware, lumber, and plywood, visit Phillips Building Supply.
All right, with us tonight is Dima Mixon. He's with Pine Belt Sports in the Hattiesburg area. They cover mostly Petal, Oak Grove, Hattiesburg, and USM Sports, and several other little high schools in that area. I know they've had some great success with Sumrall in soccer, and of course they cover Pearl River baseball, I'm sure, and Purvis, and they've just got a lot going on down there. First of all, tonight we're going to start a little bit about the basketball. Well, why don't you introduce yourself to us? Tell us what you do. Tell us about your podcast and radio show that you do, and we'll just go from there. So that'll be your introduction.
Awesome. Well, thanks very much for having me on that. Yeah, like you said, I'm the sports editor at Pine Belt News in the sports section, and I guess first and foremost, I did have wisdom teeth surgery on Friday, so if I sound a little muffled, that's the reason why my mouth is swollen. But I'm still trying to produce some content here. But yes. But I actually have 2 podcasts that I do. So I'm generally on the Super Talk Eagle Hour, which is a daily radio show for Southern Miss Athletics, and then I have another podcast that I do called A View from the Press Box, and it's something that we just started up recently, trying to garnish some viewership there. So you can definitely go check that out on YouTube or wherever we get your podcasts. And that's more like kind of an overarching view of, we hone in on Southern Miss Athletics on both shows, so both of those shows will deal with that. And then, so like you said, I cover 11 high schools in the Pine Belt area, and then William Carey, Pearl River, Jones, and then obviously Southern Miss, which gets most of the coverage, of course. So it's been a lot of fun. Been on the job since August, so after Andrew Abity left, excuse me. So it's been a lot of fun, so thanks for having me. Yes,
Andrew was on our shows multiple times, and so you had some big shoes to fill, but you look like you're doing a great job.
No doubt.
Well, listen, tell us a little bit. Let's start with the Golden Eagles basketball. The boys, or the men, I guess I should call them, they had a tremendous game last Saturday. They were, 18 points down in the first half and came back and won that ball game?
Yeah, it was a really, really impressive win for them. 86-81 over Old Dominion to move them to 15-14 on the season. When you look at the standings in the Sun Belt, they sit right now about 7th, I believe, in the Sun Belt. So you kind of like where they're sitting right now, especially since they got their star player back in Isaac Tavares finally back from injury, and he's given them a really big boost. They're 3-4. They won 3 out of the last 4 games with him back in action, and so that was great. And obviously, like you said, they were down really big in that game. I think you're right, 18 points, and they were able to come back and win that ball game. And in a game where you have to win these conference games, right? You have to win these conference games to position yourselves in best position for the tournament. And it looks like they have that chance. And guys, when you look at the Sun Belt, I mean, all these teams separated by 1 or 2 games. Really, you would think that it's really anybody's tournament in a couple of weeks in Pensacola, right? Because, I mean, all these teams are separated. They're just very close. I mean, almost all of them can have a bad night or a good night, and Southern Miss certainly is in position to make some noise in the tournament. Will they win it? I don't know yet, but we'll have to see. But they're definitely in position to put themselves in a position to win it. If they could have won a couple more conference games, they would have really had a chance to, be in the top 4. But obviously when Isaac Tavares went back, all that stuff. So it all kind of came to head when Tavares went out. But once he came back in, the team is really gelling in the right direction. They have 2 tough games this week on the road at Arkansas State on Tuesday night, and then finish the season at South Alabama on Friday before the tournament next week in Pensacola.
Okay. All right. That was a good recap. What about the women? I know they're about 50-50, pretty close to being even in the conference. How's the outlook for them? Are they playing pretty well right now?
Yeah, so they're 14-14 overall. They went through a rough stretch in January when they lost a lot of games because they had some of their star players out. And like the men, they returned a couple of their players. They won 2 games in a row last week, including a road win, which is always important in the Sun Belt. They lost on Saturday at Troy, but Troy's women's team is probably one of the better teams in the Sun Belt. They sit atop of the standings, and Southern Miss, battled down to the end of that game, and Troy kind of pulled away there at the end. Right now, Southern Miss women's is sit 7th in the Sun Belt. They sit 2 games behind Old Dominion in that 6th spot, and I've always said that for the tournament seeding purposes, you want to be 6 or higher because that positions you better for the tournament's sake, because you don't have to win 6 or 7 games to win the tournament. You only have to win 3 or 4 games to win the tournament. So they had 2 winnable games this week against South Alabama on the road in ULM. You would think if they could split those games, they would put themselves in a position to get into that top 6 spot where they want to be. Right now they sit 7th. 7th is not necessarily the worst position, the same as the men, but 6 or higher is kind of where you want to be to have a real chance to win the tournament. So, yeah, I mean, they got some players back, and we'll see what they can do. They're just a little small, and they've struggled over the past month. So I don't necessarily think they will win the tournament, but I think they could maybe win a game or 2.
Oh, well, that's what we'd like for them to do, is go as deep as they can into the tournament. That always prepares you for the future, too. Now, baseball, I mean, it's just remarkable. It seems like every year, every pitcher that USM loses, they have the next man up. I mean, and they've got a great pitching staff again this year. And, of course, they were very impressive. I thought they probably, out of the 3 Mississippi schools, Division I schools, they probably had the most demanding schedule. But we were talking, Marshall and I were talking that our 3 schools together are like 22-1, and everybody's in the top 25, and USM made the biggest jump, 20-12. Tell us about the Golden Eagles baseball.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a program that reloads, right? I mean, I don't think there's any question about that. Of course, last season, a regional host team hosted that regional, came up short, of course. You lost a lot of players off that regional team from last year. J.B. Milton being one of them, the 8th last year. He was drafted in the 1st round, and then you lost, a 20 home run guy in Nick Monaster at second base. You lost a 15 home run guy in right field with Carson Pato. And so you're kind of coming into this season thinking, they have a lot returning, but, they got a lot to replace. And so the Miss responds with that, goes 6-1, sweeps the Round Rock Classic, and, looked like there's nothing lost. So this is definitely a program that reloads, and you're right, it was a very impressive weekend this weekend out at Round Rock Classic, especially beating, I think for me it's like the way they win games is impressive, is equally impressive as them winning the games. Because there's been so many games this season where it's just come down to execution in late innings, and Southern Miss has probably won 3 or 4 games like that early in the season, which is just so big for the team to have that feeling early, so that you're more prepared for in the tournament time in May and June. So I think that to me is the biggest takeaway, that the team, no matter if they're down 2 runs in the 7th or if they're up 3 runs or up 2 runs in the 7th, like this team has won both ways, and I think that is to be really encouraging for Southern Miss fans to see that kind of just see the team's ability to win in multiple different ways early in the season. I mean, it's just so important, right? And like you said, of course, the pitching staff was tremendous this weekend. Outside of yesterday's game, I thought yesterday's game kind of got a little wacky, but outside of yesterday's game, I mean, the pitching staff has just been lights out, and really the offense hasn't even really been that great, but they've still done enough to win all these games. But you would think the offense is going to continue to get better over the season. So I mean, by May or June, this team should have everything in front of them that they want to accomplish.
I agree with you on that. Now, I know that Russo's bat is going to be good. Who are some of the other position players that are really having a good year that USM fans may not know about? Maybe a transfer or a signee or a high school signee or something like that.
Yeah, you mentioned Russo. Of course, Southern Miss fans are very familiar with Matthew Russo. He's been, he's led the teams in RBI so far. Joey Urban, he'll be either DH or center field generally. He's been, probably been the most consistent bat in the lineup so far. And tremendous weekend out there at Round Rock Classic. Kyle Morrison, he's a transfer in from South Alabama. He was leading off for Southern Miss in the first few games, and he struggled a little bit towards the end of that UC Santa Barbara series, but then bounced back with a really nice weekend at Round Rock this weekend, a couple RBIs, a couple hits. You got a transfer, or rather, you got a kind of a battle at shortstop right now between Ty Long and Seth Smith, replacing Ozzie Pratt from a season ago. Both those players have played really well, so I don't really know what Oz is going to do in that scenario. And then, from a pitching perspective, Thomas Crabtree transfer in from Tennessee. He looked really good yesterday on the mound in his short outing out there on the mound. So all these transfer players, have made immediate impacts to the Golden Eagles so far. And I forgot to mention Caleb Stelly. Stelly, he either plays DH or center field as well, and he's been a really big part of their offense as well over the first few games. So they don't really bring in that many transfers just because they like to bring in freshmen, and the freshman arms so far, guys, have been just tremendous. We've seen Dylan Causey get into games in big moments, and he's delivered. Sam Mitchell yesterday in the Round Rock Classic, delivered as a freshman in a big moment. There's so many pieces to the Southern Miss baseball team that it's really, and I've compared it to like a box of treasures where Oz can just reach into his pitching staff and pull out whatever $1 million item he has.
Yeah.
And you could basically say the same for their offense as well. So I've been on record saying this is the best team Oz has had in his tenure, and I stand by that so far. 7 games into the season, we'll have to see. It's baseball, so things happen, and you would think that there's probably going to be some kind of time where they struggle a little bit and maybe lose a game here or there. But for the vast majority of games, they should be favored, if not will win most of their remaining games, which is just equally as impressive. And yeah, you mentioned it. I mean, State and Ole Miss, they're succeeding early in the season. Of course, they don't play the level of competition that Southern Miss plays early just because of their competition in the SEC is so strong in conference. Like, they don't have to make up in non-conference with Southern Miss is having to make up in the Sun Belt. But both of those teams are coming to Hattiesburg over the next 2 weeks. So that'll be a lot of fun, right? That Mississippi State will be here next Tuesday, and then I think Ole Miss is the week after that, and then Alabama this Tuesday. So 3 SEC midweeks that Southern Miss gets to host over the next 3 weeks. So that'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I saw one college coach this week. I think it was an SEC coach. They lost to a mid-major. He said, you got to win the midweek games. And then I'm looking at Southern Miss's baseball schedule on Tuesday night, the next 3 Tuesday nights, Alabama, Mississippi State, and Ole Miss. I mean, that's quite impressive. Listen, one thing that really gets me about the way Southern Miss recruits this area. They've got 2 kids from South Jones that played for Mason Strickland, a former Eagle. They got 2 kids from West Jones that played for Trey Sutton, and they've got one from Stringer, Jackson Parker, who played for the Weathers kid that pitched a decade ago down at Southern. So they depend on a lot of those former Golden Eagle players, don't they?
No doubt about it. Ostrander says a lot of times that it's family here at Southern Miss. And, for example, like before the weekend series against UC Santa Barbara, the opening weekend series, I mean, there was, big legends from Southern Miss baseball, such as Dustin Dickerson, J.B. Middleton, Carson Pato. All of these players were back and just, swinging BP, like the practice before the UC Santa Barbara series. So it's a well-inclined group where they're all just, when you leave Southern Miss baseball, basically, you're not never coming back. The relationship doesn't break, right? So, and I think that's what's so impressive about the program is you're right, where Trey Sutton is probably calling on saying, "Hey, you probably need to get this guy," right? And he does, and then and that's just kind of how the game works, I guess. That's not central to Southern Miss. I mean, several of the programs operate that way, but when you see so many local guys making immediate impacts at Southern Miss, that has to just feel good as a coaching staff, because you know that you're recruiting the right way, but you're also not just primarily to this area, right? They have a lot of other guys from outside of this area who are equally as important to the team, but I think finding that blend is what makes Oz and his coaching staff so good. That he knows talent when he sees it, and he probably listens to all of those guys that you were talking about, of course, but it's ultimately the decision's up to him, and so far, I mean, he's made right decisions. You can't fault him for that. They recruit this area very well. Some people argue that they want it to be more. Some people argue they want it to be less. But Oz feels like that, he's recruited this area to, where he wants it to be as of now. And like I said, the transfer portal nowadays, baseball teams are trying to replace, rosters and things like that. Southern Miss baseball really doesn't do that. I mean, they probably had 4 or 5 transfers all of last season come in. Now, it was transfers that they needed, but they're not going to sign a transfer just to have them ride the bench, if that makes sense, right? Like that's the role for these freshman arms or these freshman hitters, because they want them to come in here, stay for 3 years, and leave as a draft one, as an MLB draft prospect, and they've been able to do that with so many players over Ostrander's tenure, not only as head coach but also pitching coach.
Yes, and Coach Oz did a tremendous job when he was at Jones. But it's good to have these high school coaches that have played for their college and come back, because even if they don't have a prospect, they probably have seen a prospect that they've gone to get. So that's always good. Final question: how do you think they're going to? You think it's just going to be usual? It's going to be Coastal Carolina, probably Troy, maybe Louisiana Lafayette, and Southern Miss in the hunt for the regular season Sun Belt title?
Yeah, I think all 4 of those teams are more than likely in the hunt. I think Coastal Carolina is probably the favorite, and the only reason I say that is not because I think they're better than Southern Miss, but they don't play Southern Miss or Troy in the regular season, which is just crazy when you think about it. So they avoid the top 2 other teams. So Southern Miss and Troy play each other. So I would think that the Golden Eagles and Troy would probably split that series. So when you think about that, I would think Coastal would have a leg up there. So I would think Coastal's probably the favorite. I would not sleep on Louisiana. They've had a good start to their season. And then another team to keep in mind, just an eye on, this is a little bit of a dark horse team, Arkansas State. I think they've had a really good start to their season. They got a lot of bats back from last season, and a couple of pitchers. I think they might make some noise this year in the Sun Belt. But that's just my 2 cents on it, and not a lot of people listen to me on that. So, but yeah, so I would think those 4 teams are definitely in the hunt for the regular season championship, and then Arkansas State's probably my dark horse. But I would think Coastal is definitely the clear favorite.
Hey, Dima, this is Marshall. We appreciate that. That's a good report. We're excited about USM baseball for sure. We're out of time. As I told you, we would run out of time at some point, but we really thank you, Dima, for being with us today and what you brought to the Brouhaha table. Going to ask you to hang on just a second. We're going to take a break to hear from our sponsors, and then Dale and I'll be back after this one commercial break.
Phillips Building Supply in Laurel, your hometown building supply store since 1954. We are locally owned and pride ourselves on helping our customers find exactly what they need. From foundations to roofs to doors and windows, Phillips has it. For tools, hardware, lumber, and plywood, visit Phillips Building Supply.
Welcome back, everybody. I tell you what, Dima did a really good job for us, didn't he, Dale?
He did. Yeah,
he can go,
did.
man.
He did.
He can go. Listen, we're in our final segment tonight. Where you stand on Steve Smith? Stephen Smith.
Yeah,
we're talking about the preacher over at first, but no, Stephen A. Smith. Let's go with that.
Well, you know, there's a preacher out at West Shady Grove Baptist Church my mother goes to named Steve Smith.
Okay.
And so when my dad passed away, we had Stephen Smith from West Shady Grove, Steve Smith from First Baptist Church, and Mitchell Smith, former preacher at West Shady Grove. Okay. So we had Smiths all the way lined up. So Smith's a very popular name.
Well, Stephen A. Smith's a big name, and he's been to Mississippi. He's been giving Ole Miss a hard time, hadn't he?
Well, you know what? I think he's come on board a little bit with us.
Well, tell us how that transpired. Did Coach the coach? Do they call her Coach Yo? Is it?
Yo, wow, yeah.
Yeah, okay. She obviously heard something he said or something, and she invited him.
Yeah, well, it was big news when Lane Kiffin was heading out of town to everywhere he went to. Anyway, he said, well, you know, Kiffin's leaving because he can get the brothers to come to Baton Rouge instead of Oxford. That no brother wants to go to Oxford, Mississippi, you know. Okay. And so she called him out, and I agree with her something because if you want to get into a black-white situation, I imagine if Ole Miss has 100 football players, I would assume 85 of them are probably black players. So there are a lot of brothers that like to come to Oxford, and there's probably a lot of sisters because her basketball team is, I'm sure she's got more black players than she does white players. And so, it's just, we've had this negative deal from the national media, people that have never visited here, just thinking that we're still in the 60s. I had a person I worked with one time from Brooklyn, New York, and she had married a truck driver. And she got on where I was working in Laurel at one time, and she was a big New York Giant fan, and we started talking. She said she was going to go back. She said she couldn't get her family to come down here, and I said, why? She said, well, they don't even think Mississippi has running water or toilets yet. I said, really? She said, yeah. And so we were talking another day, and the difference between the North and the South. Okay. She was telling me her dad never had a driver's license in his whole life. He had never driven a car because he had the subway, the buses, bicycle, everyone needed. A lot of people up there just don't have cars. It's just busy. Yeah. And she was telling that her dad had to pay this was in the 80s, it was like $300 a month to park where he worked if he brought his car. And because, there's nowhere to park. And so, it's just the difference. And until you visit something, you really don't know about it. But I think he came away he met Pete Golan, he met Trinidad, and, he came to the basketball game. The fans gave him a standing ovation, they welcomed him. Yeah. We've got a lot of friendly folks down here.
He's coming back, he said.
Yeah.
She comes to town this fall.
Yeah.
That ought to be fun.
Yeah. So, yeah.
That's just little stuff that goes along with the game, makes it fun. I've never been a big Stephen A. Smith fan, but I'm kind of starting to believe on him a little bit.
Yeah, but that old dark cloud hanging over Oxford appeared after all of this, after the game, because this guy from Baton Rouge that used to be the head football coach at Ole Miss, he starts putting out on Twitter. Yeah. He's trying to get his name out there some more. So now that Stephen A. is coming back in September to watch that game, I imagine we'll have that dark cloud over us again. So, but anyway, and congratulations to our U.S. Olympic hockey teams. I am so happy for them.
Yes, sir. Me too. Just win, baby. Just win. Listen, we're out of time. We've had a good time today. We appreciate our guest and we appreciate you listening to us. And want to remind you that you can follow us during the week, on our Facebook page, the Brouhaha, and all of our shows are cataloged for you where you can listen to them on demand at our YouTube channel, the Brouhaha. But now it's time to say goodbye, Dale.
Goodbye, Dale.
Goodbye, everybody. We'll see you next week for more of the Brouhaha. Hey, Jamie, get us out of here.
You've been listening to the Brouhaha with Del McKee and Marshall Wood. Heard Tuesday evening, 6 p.m. on WABO. For more of the Brouhaha, follow us during the week on Facebook and WABO.